Okay.
Aloha.
Okay.
Aloha.
Aloha. Oh God, no. Simon loves
I
aloha.
love aloha. The aloha spirit, it's runs straight through this podcast. It's fantastic.
Aloha and welcome to SUP FM, the podcast for stand-up paddleboarders everywhere. So with no further ado, let's get out on the water and on with the show. Here are your hosts, Nick and Simon.
Well, welcome to Mr. Spike Reid. It's great to have you on SUP FM.
Hello and good morning.
And good morning. We have Simon Hutchinson there in the background as well. So how are you doing, Simon?
I'm doing very, very well, thank you.
Fantastic. Now, Spike, you've got a fascinating history already. You've been around Martinique, you've been paddleboarding across the UK. Should we just start off with a little bit about how you actually got into paddleboarding itself?
Certainly. I worked at the Royal Geographical Society in London for 3.5 years, and whilst I was there, I got very involved in the Explore Weekend, which runs every November, to basically feed back information from expeditions and also inspire future expeditions and fieldwork. And there I met a gentleman called Dave Cornthwaite, and he's an amazing adventurer, and he is the gentleman who did the paddleboarding down the length of the Mississippi, quite a long distance. And he then invited me to join him and 3 others on the first circumnavigation of the island of Martinique by paddleboard.
Okay, so that was the first time you ever supped. I thought you were like a bit of a sup fanatic before then. So you just got on the board and went around Martinique, right?
I'd done a short trip from Reading down to London last summer, paddleboarding. But before that, so I'm fairly new to it. I've only been in it for about 10 months now.
Okay, but I'd just love to go a little bit further back to the Royal Geographical Society, because that's quite an esteemed organization. How did you get involved there?
So they run a series of bursaries and grants for expeditions. We applied for the Land Rover Royal Geographical Society Go Beyond bursary, and somehow managed to win it the first year it was run. And with the funding and the provision of a Land Rover Defender, we did a circumnavigation of the whole world along the line of 50 degrees north. And along the way, we did a series of case studies looking at the social impact of climate change, how it's affecting primary sector workers, farmers, and the like. Okay,
so you've been around the world already.
Mm-hmm. But cheating,
well,
I was using an engine.
Well, there's no cheating there. It's still a hell of a journey. I didn't know you were an accomplished adventurer already.
Yeah, I've also got involved in the mountaineering through people I've met at the society, and I've undertaken quite a few first ascents expeditions, trekking through the friendly part of Afghanistan, new peaks in Central Asia, and now I'm qualified as an international mountain leader.
Wow. So have you met Sir Ranulph Fiennes?
So I worked with him on the Coldest Journey expedition. I was supporting it from the UK, from the warmth of the UK. But that was an attempt by Sir Ranulph and 5 of his teammates to do the first ever winter crossing of Antarctica. And I was the education liaison officer back here in the UK, getting the message out to schools and to universities.
And so what does that involve? Did you go around and do lots of speeches and exactly what did you do?
Yeah, so I did a lot of school talks and getting the message out, because some people go, well, who's going to be the next Ranulph Fiennes? There's not going to be the next Ranulph Fiennes, but you can go out there and find the adventure that suits you, whether it's climbing a mountain that's never been summited before, or descending a river by paddleboard that's never been paddleboarded down before, or just finding an adventure in your hometown and hopefully inspire some of these young people to seek a challenge a first time for them.
Absolutely. And that finding an adventure in your home, I really love myself as well. Like, for example, I'm sure you're aware of Alistair Humphreys and his micro-adventure program.
Absolutely, and fully support that. And I think that micro-adventures is a good program, and I'm kind of focusing on adventures in your own backyard, which has lots of similarities, but it doesn't need to be short. And have recently, we just completed a trip that was 9 long days on the paddleboards, and although it was close to home, it was a big adventure.
Sure. So let's get into that trip, because we can hop back to your circumnavigation of Martinique a little bit later. But let's talk about the cross UK trip. So you went from Bristol to Putney on a paddleboard, right?
Yeah, certainly. We set off just over a week ago, and we had to get up early doors and catch that early morning tide, because Bristol has got a huge tidal range. That morning there was 13 meters of tide at Avon mouth. Wow. You get that wrong and you're not going to be able to paddle against it. So we caught the tide up from near the mouth of the river, and up through underneath Clifton Suspension Bridge, up to Bristol.
What about the tidal bore? When does that occur? Because I know that's a really fun thing. That actually goes up the river, right?
So that goes up the river adjacent to the Avon, the Severn. And it was very distracting. I mean, if we got sucked out the wrong way, we'd end up going up the Severn and we could have caught the bore, which would be a good way to cover lots of distance. But unfortunately, It's not on the Avon.
Okay. So the Avon, so how far can you get up the Avon before you have to switch rivers or canals?
So we paddled up over a day and a half up to Bath. And luckily the water levels and flow rate was quite low, so we weren't paddling hard against a raging river. And then we switched over to the canal just after Bath, and that's the Kennet and Avon Canal that stretches all the way across the country to join the Thames at Reading.
Okay.
So Spike, what sort of challenges did you run up against? Because obviously canals, you've got locks and narrow boats and so on competing for the space.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of locks. There's over 100 locks on the Kennet and Avon Canal. So we became shamefully experts in portage. We were just doing portage after portage, and the biggest challenge was Cane Hill, which is just before Devizes, where the Devizes Westminster race starts from, and that is 29 locks over just a few miles. Wow. And that's a lot of carrying all of our camping equipment. We didn't have a support team. It was just a bunch of friends doing this adventure in our own backyard.
How many of you were there?
So there was two of us, myself and David Altabev, who did the whole distance. And then we had 5 friends who joined us for various sections, and kept the morale going after some long days on the boards. And
as you said, it was no support at all. You just camped on the side of the river.
Yeah, so we'd sometimes find a good pub, and pubs let us camp in their beer gardens occasionally. And other times we just tucked into a little bit of woodland or an empty farmer's field, as long as it didn't have a bull in it.
You had a bull in it?
No, we did check.
Is that the first thing to look for in a paddock? Where's the bull?
Yeah, which is more dangerous, the bull or the farmer with the shotgun?
Yeah, I guess they could both be equally scary.
Yeah.
But talking about portages and equipment and things, did you carry all your equipment on the front and back placements on the board, and then every single time you portage you have to take them off, or how exactly did your kit work?
So we had some fantastic Origin paddleboards and some Joby paddleboards, and they were touring boards and had the lashing points on the front. And we had all our kit packed up in Aquapack dry bags on the front, so that if we did flip or the rain came down, then things would stay dry. But we had quite a load, so we did 2-man lifts. So you just kind of pull up, get the front out of the water, and then 2-man lifts, come back and then get the second board. And we actually got it kind of down to kind of quite a swift action, kind of once your shoulders get used to kind of carrying that big load, or sometimes just sitting it on your head.
Yeah, because would that be more efficient than actually taking off the kit every single time you went to portage?
Yeah. I mean, that you can do that and then do it solo just by taking the kit off and then putting it back on again. But the amount of work that would have just taken day in, day out for those well over 100 locks, it would have been slowed us down a great deal.
Yeah, that was my next question: is how many locks did you do? 100. That's a lot. Huh?
Yeah, and we got used to them. I mean, it's like, it's just 18 locks today, unlike the 25 we did yesterday. Oh, that's great. That's far less.
Must have got really fit. Are you fairly exhausted right now?
No. I'm still fighting fit. I had a good shoulder massage, sports massage yesterday, and back in the game and planning a few more paddleboarding trips over the weekend and a bit further in the future.
Just another question about the equipment and the kit. Obviously, lightness is the thing, particularly if you've got to carry it between so many locks. What sort of sleeping arrangements did you have in terms of tents, or did you have hammocks, or what were your sort of arrangements there?
So we had very lightweight kit. You just kind of shaved the kit down everywhere, and it's like, right, let's go for carbon paddle. We had some great carbon paddles from Ainsworth and the new range, and we just looked at grams. And I'm kind of fairly particular about shaving off grams and grams and grams. Kind of right where you cut your toothbrush in half, and we were using lightweight tents, but often we would just bivvy, just pull out a bivvy bag and just find a place, tuck in out of the wind, and get some sleep until you're up early at dawn to get back on the water.
That kept you nice and warm, did it?
Some nights were chilly, but especially after kind of the exertion, kind of for the full day, often we'd be on the water for about 12 hours, with the odd break here and there. But yeah, about 12 hours on the water, camp to camp.
What about heating things? You make fires? You could take a little gas stove with?
Yeah. A little pocket rocket type stove, and that kind of meant that you could get some hot food down you at the end of the day on the water.
And the all-important British cup of tea, right?
Absolutely. I mean, a cup of tea does solve most situations, and getting that hot tea in you makes you feel a lot better.
So were there any stages at the trip where you just thought, oh, God, I just can't do this anymore?
Well, no, I was like, I'm going to carry on doing this. And there was a time when we were behind schedule. We were a full day behind where we had aimed to be. And it was like, right, we're gonna extend it a day. Are we going to have to extend it 2 days? And there were some big question marks about whether we could complete it to schedule. But we pushed through, and our pace got a lot faster. Admittedly, we were going downhill after Devizes pretty much, but the flow again didn't help us massively down the Thames because there's been so little rain in the UK, so it wasn't a wonderful torrent that we could get up a few miles an hour with. So there was some doubt in the middle, but we pushed through and finished on time and caught that tide down to Putney.
Oh, well done. And what about the weather? Did it play along completely for you?
We had glorious sunshine for pretty much throughout. We had 1 day of overcastness with the odd shower, but the sun was out wonderfully, contrary to many people's perception of the terrible British weather. And the only downside we had was an easterly wind against us, which is against the prevailing wind southwesterly, which would be great to have a nice tailwind. But we had some long days on open flat sections of canal and just paddling into the wind all day.
Yeah, it must be pretty daunting sometimes.
Yeah, but it's just kind of keep going. We can make it to this point where we plan to camp and, check the map. Yep, there is a pub just there. And it's kind of, that makes a good goal to get to that pub at the end of the day.
It sounds like pubs and tea, the most crucial bits on this trip.
Yeah, absolutely.
But obviously you don't just get on a paddleboard, chuck some kit on and go. What was the preparation like, and how long was it, and did you get any sponsorship involved?
Yeah, so we worked with several sponsors, keeping all your kit dry. That's where Aquapack came on board and massively helped us in the provision of some great holdalls and dry bags inside. So the kit that's essential, electronics, well, not essential, but essential to keep dry. Kind of double wrapping that, and then the boards, both Origin paddleboards came on board and Joby came on board, but actually the owner of Origin, one of the owners, Neil, he's based in Switzerland, and he actually came over and joined us for the first 3 days from Bristol up to.
Wow, that must have been nice.
Yeah,
that's good support.
Absolutely, and was able to give us some tips, and also kind of we gave us some feedback about the boards, so the new boards are going to be even better than the good touring boards they've got already. And then Ainsworth came on board as a sponsor, and gave us.
What's Ainsworth?
Ainsworth paddles. Sorry, they make a range of kayaking, canoeing, and stand-up paddles, and they provided a range of paddles and also a spare in case things went Pete Tong. You don't want to be up the creek without a paddle.
Definitely not. So, but all these sponsors, I mean, surely they want some kind of feedback. Are you preparing a film or a blog post, or what's the deal?
Yeah, so I'm going to be preparing I am preparing a film. Got a lot of clips, and it's just going to be a short little film. And the aim of the film, the aim of the whole trip, was to say, you don't need to go and run up and do the Three Peaks Challenge. You can have an adventure that you make up. You dream up the idea. You do the preparation, obviously. So learning how to paddleboard, learning which kit you need is essential. But you can actually go out and make a new challenge, and hopefully the film will inspire people to do that, and also to get more involved in paddleboarding, because it's a much misunderstood sport, I think.
How do you think it's misunderstood?
I think in Britain, most people are like, "Oh, you must be falling in a lot. Do you not get really cold every time you fall in?" But I paddled all the way across the country and didn't fall in once. And I think people go, "Oh, I wouldn't be able to stand on it." It's like, well, you can stand up straight. Can you ride a bike?
Yeah. It's interesting. I never heard that before. I mean, I think a lot of people do think they're going to fall in, but after the first hour, you're absolutely fine. There's no problem at all.
Absolutely. And the canal water isn't clean. Some of it, up high was relatively unpleasant, kind of no flowing water, so it was a bit stagnant, but none of us fell in up there. So I think people are a bit, oh God, I couldn't do that. And also the weather in Britain, oh my God, it must be really cold. I'm like, yeah, the water is, but I haven't fallen in it, so it's okay.
Yeah, but it's funny here because I'm based in Portugal, and all the people I speak to throughout the winter, I've been paddling throughout the winter, and everyone's been saying, "Oh, it's so cold. How can you paddle?" I said, "Well, it's not really that cold, especially here in Portugal. And when you're wearing a wetsuit, I'm in the middle of winter. I'm taking off my wetsuit because I'm just sweating.
Yeah.
So hot.
Yeah.
Because as you say, you never fall in the water. So.
Yeah, we don't like to talk about that though, Spike, because I get jealous. But yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you. One thing that I'm really interested in your view in is these domestic adventures, because there certainly seems to be an appetite out there, and with you and Dave and Alistair Humphreys and so on, there's quite a lot of focus on it. Why do you think people are so interested in this whole area of adventure?
Well, you can go and travel to the other side of the world and have great adventures out there. And I am guilty of indulging in a little bit of that in terms of kind of getting up the mountain leading experience and such like. But one of the greatest things about Britain and Ireland is the variety of landscapes. And if you go out there and have an adventure, you do see your home country that you've lived in for 20 or 30 or great number of years, and you're just like, wow, I didn't actually realize this bit was here. And I've traveled down that way so many times on the train back to my hometown in Plymouth, but I didn't actually really take in that part of the country. So to see it at paddleboarding pace, you just kind of take it in far more and get to enjoy it in a very different way. So I think having adventures close to home, as well as those overseas, should be celebrated.
And I think the beauty of paddleboarding as well is you're seeing things from a completely different angle, from Absolutely. A river or from an ocean. So it helps too. But it's a perfect segue to go into faraway trips like Martinique, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So you and Dave got together. Did Dave just come up to you one day over a beer and say, "Hey, I'd like to paddle around the Caribbean"?
So he was heading out there on a trip afterwards on a yacht with Emily Penn. And he planned this trip, and he was looking for a photographer, a filmmaker, and I have a reasonable amount of experience in that area. And I kind of put up my hand and said, "Hi, Dave," and sign me up. And I went out.
So tell us how he really got in touch with you. Were you just sort of sitting having coffee one day, or what is the story in detail?
It was a post on his website, davecornthwaite.com, looking for a filmmaker. I think he did it on Facebook too. And I was like, yeah, that sounds like an ideal trip for me. I want to get more stuck into paddleboarding. And I knew very little about the Caribbean. None of us had been to Martinique before. None of us had done open water paddling before. in kind of open sea. And most of my friends thought I was off on some nice little jolly cruise around the Pacific island, around the Caribbean island. But actually, we had some quite serious conditions out there, some huge swell rolling in from the Atlantic, and also some quite significant winds that would pick up by about 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning. And, well, as everyone knows, paddling against a headwind is tough.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first I heard of it was when I saw you guys milling around the airport on Facebook, because I also follow Dave Cornthwaite on Facebook. And then you seem to bump into hundreds of Miss World contestants.
Yeah, it was the French Miss Nationale, which is a beauty pageant, and they happened to be sharing the same hotel as us. Unfortunately, the American teammates were delayed by, I think it's about 24 hours. So we were stuck in this hotel with all these beauty queens or beauty princesses, and there's worse places you could be stuck.
So naturally, you taught them how to paddleboard, right?
No, unfortunately, we didn't get them out on the water. I think they had to go off somewhere else to do the bikini shoot or something. So we just got out on the Origin paddleboards and had to play around below the hotel. Okay,
and the planning for this trip the trip was sponsored by Origin again, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And Aquapack. And it was planned in a relatively short amount of time again. And yeah, these things do require a lot of work to kind of pull off successfully in terms of the preparation, the kit sourcing, and getting kind of those things shipped through from Amazon to arrive, hopefully before your flight leaves. But we got the kit sorted and then headed out. I knew David and Ben, but the American teammates, they were new to me, and they were also quite new to the ocean, because they lived in Sioux Falls, which is about as far away from the sea as you can get in the whole of the United States.
So it was all brand new to you guys. So how did you fare on that first day getting through the shore break? What did it feel like?
So luckily we started on the sheltered side of the island and got out, and it is amazing. I think this is another thing that's misunderstood about paddleboarding, is how stable the board is once it's loaded with your kit. And when you're doing that touring, you can stay upright, even in reasonable amount of swell, for most of the time, if not all of the time. We paddled out and went and saw this amazing island, Diamond Rock, which was held by the British as a little outpost, and they got a cannon to the top of that and took shots at the passing French and the passing Portuguese and Spanish, which annoyed those navies a bit. But they held that rock for quite a while. So we went back just to celebrate that little bizarre bit of history of the garrison that held that volcanic rock sticking out of the ocean.
Did you reclaim it for the UK?
We definitely flew the flag there. We couldn't land there due to the swell, actually, and the volcanic rock, very sharp, with a inflatable paddleboard. It's not good to rip it to shreds or get some punctures on day one. So we didn't climb to the top and fly the flag, but I still think part of me still thinks it's British.
Great. So were there any problems like puncturing your boards or other kinds of hassles that you had to worry about apart from the major swells?
So we didn't get a single puncture in those boards, despite the kind of volcanic rock and volcanic sand up in the north of the island. And the biggest challenge, I think, was pulling in on the exposed east coast with the Atlantic rollers coming in. And then the next day, we set out early, around about the time of dawn, and we couldn't get through the swell. The waves were so big that getting a fully laden paddleboard out through huge waves was quite a feat. And in the end, we had to hole up on that little beach camp between the cliff and the breakers for another day. And luckily the swell was passable, just about passable the next day. We pushed out beyond those breakers to paddle further on down the coast.
Did anybody get hurt trying to get out through the breakers in the first day?
There was a few wipeouts, but people kind of persevered and gave it a damn good punt. But No, there's no injuries. Everything kind of thrown off the board when you kind of like pick up the floating dry bags, pick up the board, and then, oh, actually, there was someone on this board, pick up them as well. Not necessarily in that order.
Yeah, what must be difficult about a situation like that when you got adverse conditions and there's a team of you, what are there, 5 or 6 of you?
5 of us, yeah.
5 of you. Surely some people just start getting really down and just wanting to go home and things like that. Did that disrupt the trip at all? Any problems?
I mean, there was kind of a huge amount of positivity in the team, and it's like, right, well, okay, Ben, you didn't succeed on your first attempt to get through those breakers, and do you want to turn and take a breather on the beach, or do you want to go back? It's like, no, I'm going to go straight back out there. And it's like, wow, I mean, and so kind of getting back on the board, and then just kind of you're watching for that little gap in the sets, and then getting them out through that, and we got first 2 off, then got David out with his big board and a lot of kit, including a drone, and then got Rob out, and I was like, right, okay, I'm the last man, okay, so right, I need to get through this somehow, and didn't have someone to tell me when the set gap was, but managed to push through, luckily found a lucky gap.
Excellent. Yeah, that's great. I mean, so it's really nice that you had a great team like that, because I remember I read Ranulph Fiennes' book about, one of his many books, about going through the Antarctic, and he was saying that the worst thing on a trip is to have a difficult problem with a team member.
Oh,
so it must be horrendous. Yeah, have you experienced that before?
Absolutely, and I think the most important thing about preparing for a trip is choosing a team. And you need to look at kind of how you complement each other, and you're going to spend a long time together. The only conversation you're going to have out at sea is just with that one person. Are you going to be able to kind of get on with them? Are you going to get on with them well? So I think it's really kind of one of the biggest challenges to a friendship is to kind of go out there on an expedition. The people I've done paddleboarding trips with, I've got on well with, but there's some people I've done mountaineering trips with, which I wouldn't invite them to join another expedition.
Mm-hmm. Sure. I just sometimes, maybe it's a little bit naivety, but I sometimes think that people are bonded by the same experience. If you're a stand-up paddleboarder, oh wow, we all do stand-up paddle, we all love nature and and we all get along fine. But not necessarily the case, is it?
No, and it is still, particularly in the UK, there's very few people who are involved in the sport actively and are keen to kind of get out there. But more and more of my friends are like, this actually seems quite interesting. Can I join one of your trips? I don't know how to paddleboard, but I'm keen to learn. Can you teach me? And then we can go out and do one of these next touring trips that you've got in the pipeline.
Mm-hmm. So what was it like working with Dave? I mean, it was not working, but I mean, expeditioning with Dave, as it were, because he's larger than life. I mean, he's a really sort of famous adventurer these days, isn't he? Yeah,
he's a great character, and he's got some great experience of kind of the long haul. This was a relatively short expedition for him, just 12 days out on the water. Well, 11 days and 1 day stuck on a beach. And he's got a great amount of experience of paddleboarding and the kind of camp life, and then kind of getting sponsors on board to kind of really give some gusto to the trip with the right kit.
I'm sure. I mean, he holds the Guinness World Book of Records for the longest paddleboard ever. I think it's still held by him, actually. Do you know if that's correct or not?
Yes, I believe he does still hold that, and I would invite any listener who thinks that they're game to take on that challenge, and they could have a great paddleboarding experience. I think it could make a great next episode of SUP FM.
Well, yeah, we've invited Dave, and he's just a bit busy at the moment in the Far East, but he is going to hopefully get on board with us as soon as he can, because we'd love to hear about his 2,000-mile trip down the Mississippi. I think it's 2,000 and more, I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's certainly a long way, that river.
Another chap we're thinking of getting on as well is called Chris Burtish. He's a South African paddleboarder, and he was attempting to paddle across the Atlantic. Hasn't done it yet, though. Be interesting to see how that goes.
Yeah, it's quite a long way.
Would you join him?
I'm not sure. I mean, one of the greatest things about paddleboarding is you get such a great, you get to take in the environment and see so much more of it than you do when you're kayaking. If we kayaked across Britain, we just would have seen a lot of riverbank, given the height of the riverbank. Whereas when you're paddleboarding, you see the landscape around you, you get to take in far more. If we're paddling across the Atlantic, we'd just see far more Atlantic.
Yeah.
And some more Atlantic. Is it blue over there? Yeah, no, it's looking a bit grey. Or white,
Absolutely.
depending on the wind. But so it sounds like an interesting adventure. I'm not sure if I'd go for it. But I wish him the very best of luck.
Spike, just on that topic, and talking about Martinique again, did you see any wildlife out there? Because not many sharks around the UK coast. Well, there are a few small ones, but did you see anything in that line out there?
Yeah, there was a shark sighting close to one of the other boards. We saw turtles a few times, and turtles sometimes kind of surface right next to the paddleboard and go, "What on earth are you? Who are you, and what are you doing here?" Looking quite surprised. And we also we met a very friendly Martinique gentleman, well, a French gentleman who's moved to Martinique, and he then came up to the top of the island and camped out with us one night. But before we set up camp, he went out and caught a couple of barracuda. Well, actually 6 barracuda, but some fell off the line. And we had a good barbecue that night, enjoying a good barbecue grill.
So, Spike, what's next?
What's next? Well, so I've done cross England, and really, I mean, the next challenge, logical to go north and cross Scotland, up the Great Glen. If we've got a tailwind there, that would be far more achievable than paddling against a headwind all the way through that. And that's a shorter distance, but an amazing landscape. And then there's less...
So just on that, would you be paddling through lochs or going through a river?
Yeah, so it's lochs in the Scottish sense. A loch is a big lake, and there are a few of the more traditional canal locks to get up into that, but then going up these big lakes between Fort William and Inverness.
Actually, I think some guys have done it before from SUP. I'm pretty sure I saw a video about it. I'm not sure. Maybe I should send it to you if you haven't seen it.
Yeah, that's not going to be a world first, but
it'll be good fun, I'm sure.
Yeah, and then also looking to head over to Ireland. I'm half Irish, and the longest river in the British Isles is the River Shannon. So looking to do that from source to sea later this year.
Gee, that sounds exciting.
Yeah.
That sounds great. Where can we find you online?
I'm on Twitter as Spike Reid, and that's SpikeReid. On Facebook, it's the Paddleboard River Project, and that is to encourage more people to get out on British and Irish waterways by paddleboard, the Paddleboard River Project on Facebook.
Excellent. Great. Well, Spike, it's been fantastic having you on board, and thank you very much for joining us for SUP FM podcast. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Nick. Thank you very much, Simon, and thank you to the listeners.
Thank you for listening to SUP FM, the #1 podcast for stand-up paddlers wherever you are. If you like what you've heard, please leave us a review on iTunes. Until then, we'll see you in the water.